So Marjolein, Karien and Harriet, if you could begin to unmute yourselves and get ready to share. First of all, I'm very sorry, Harriet, for almost putting you one session earlier. That's my bad. Very sorry for that. It's been a very long week. Again, these colleagues are very close to my heart because the Expert Centre on Inclusive Education are also members of our LINK network, which is a European network of organisations that all work on inclusion, this topic that we've been collaborating on this topic for many, many years, and we actually met earlier on this week to discuss the COVID-19 situation and how that's impacting on our work. So I'm very delighted that you're all here. So that's Marjolein, Karien and Harriet, who's actually coming from the University of Applied Sciences in Utrecht. And I was saying to the guys before this session started that I love its title. It's "Do you contribute to the student journey?" So it's actually asking us to take stock and take a look at our own role in this. So I'm going to, without further ado, hand over to you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dara. So welcome, good afternoon. Welcome to this talk set by Dara about do you contribute to the student journey? And we are really happy to be part of this AHEAD webinar. So my name is Marjolein, and I am presenting, as said by Dara, together with Karien Coppens and with Harriet Rempe. And Karien and I are both working at the Expert Centre on Inclusive Education in the Netherlands. And Harriet is a policy advisor at the University of Applied Sciences in Utrecht. So the Expert Centre on Inclusive Education, we existed since 1946, so it has been a long time already. And during all the years, a lot of work has been done. And the organization also has undergone several changes. Nowadays, ECIO, so Expert Centre on Inclusive Education, ECIO, supports educational institutions in their efforts to make education accessible to students with disabilities and with special needs, and to improve the transition to the labor market, and to contribute to the well-being of students who experience obstacles. So, for example, we do have a policy scan to assess the current and desired situation concerning students with a disability and student well-being, or we use like the Flex scan to optimize flexibility and personalized education. So I invite you to visit our website or send us an email if you would like to know more about our organization or our work. So for now, I would like to move on to today. So our aim for today is to examine together with you the student journey. And Karien will tell a bit more about the student journey, and we will try to make it a bit more concrete by giving an example and of also sharing a good practice from the University of Applied Sciences in Utrecht. So Harriet will share that good practice. And we will end with like a short brain teaser for you, and of course some time for Q&A. So for now, this was our brief introduction, and Karien will tell you a bit more about the student journey. So Karien, go ahead.
Thank you, Marjolein. The student journey, which you see on this slide, is a guide or a map which takes professionals along 13 key moments in a student study process from the perspective of the student. With the map, professionals can get acquainted with the challenges for students and with the different roles professionals throughout the organization play. In this way, it becomes clear how the journey, how the support of students can be improved through mutual cooperation. Of course, this tool presents a simplified version of the student process, key moments and key figures, and the reality will be different at each educational institution and even within institutions. We're well aware of this. But nonetheless, we think the student journey map can be a helpful tool. For example, by making personas in terms of academic year, previous education, special needs, expectations, and so on, and choosing a key moment and realizing what does this persona need and come across during this key moment, and what does he or she need. To give you an example, a student has made a study choice and now it's time to apply. And in the Netherlands, students have to register via a national database before May 1st. There will be a study choice check and sometimes a draw or a decentralized selection. And students might doubt, I want to mention I have a disability. Why? And what do they do with this information? They might wonder, will it play a role in the admission procedure? For example, David, good name, also in the last presentation, graduate students of biology, has dyscalculia and dyslexia, and he said, I didn't mention I have a disability when I replied because I didn't know exactly what my advantage would be, and I thought, well, we'll see what happens. Looking at the process, we can figure, what did David come across during the application? What did he need? How did professionals throughout the institution play a role? Some ideas. Student counselors experience more often that students do not report a disability or do so too late because they're afraid to get a label and they don't know what happens with the information. So it's really important to inform prospective students about what happens with the information and which steps will be taken. And colleagues within the communication department can help with this. Moreover, it's important that students indicate the needs in advance, and this can be encouraged by asking questions well in advance of the start of the study, during the registration process or during the compulsory study choice check we have in the Netherlands. And to ensure a good response, well, the question must be asked correctly. So the student counselor is probably aware of students' hesitations, and the communication department knows how to dispel these hesitations by providing the right information. So they really have to work together on this. Furthermore, employees of the student administration or ICT are their daily basis. They streamline information process and link data, and they can help to make sure that all students who indicate they have a disability in the registration system automatically receive information or an email with a link to the website where they can find this information. So they can also filter requests for standard facilities or tailor-made solutions and get them to the right person. So this is an example, and now we go to the good practice.
Yes. So now we would like to share, as said before, a good practice. And a good practice, I will give a short introduction about what we've done as an expert center together with the University of Applied Sciences. And Harriet will tell more about the experience of the institution themselves, so about their results, the impact. So at the university, we organized like a process workshop for each key moment you saw in the previous visual Karien showed you. And during the workshop, the participants had like an in-depth discussion about that key moment. And to structure the workshop, they used like a format. And they also used that format to write down results. So, for example, they described like what was the process goal? What are the key performance indicators? What was the previous process? What will be the further process? Are there some laws, regulations we need to be aware of? And what are risks? And also important, who is the process owner? And when they were talking about rights and responsibilities within the institution for the process, they use like I'm not sure if you know it already, but it's the RESCI model. So the R, it stands for responsible. So who is responsible for the implementation? The A is for accountable. Who is the process owner? The final accountability. The S is for support. Who will provide support during that process? The C, it's about consulting, who needs to be consulted in advance, or from whom do we need approval. And the last one is the I, informed, and who needs to be informed afterwards. So, and after doing that, they also described every activity for that key moment. So I will give an example. One activity could be like in the first phase, the first key moment, like providing information on open days. So, and then describe for that activity, like what's the input, what's the description, what will be the output, which actors do have a role, what kind of resources we do have, what's the deadline, and what are areas for attention as well. And another format was used to make like a list of actions they formulated during that process workshops for that specific key moment. And they also wrote down like who's the action owner. And beside actions, they also wrote down like what are maybe some bottlenecks. Could we identify some bottlenecks? And also like, okay, If there's a bottleneck, with whom do we need to discuss it? So it's a bit abstract. I hope the experience of Harriet will make it a bit more concrete. And on the sheet, you do see like a small screenshot of one of the formats, but we will share the formats we used during the workshops afterwards via Ahead. So we will send them to you. So now I really would like to ask Harriet to unmute herself and to share her experiences. So Harriet, go ahead.
Thank you. Now, what we have learned is that the student journey is an important tool for the organization consisting of teachers, staff members and students. It's important to look at the process and the processes and the key moments with all the people that are involved in the organization and respond from different positions and perspectives. The chain as a whole has to be taken into consideration, especially the moments of transition, when responsibilities are transferred, are very interesting. At these specific moments, people have to work together, and then it becomes clear how important it is that all the different parts stick together to form an uninterrupted chain. With regard to my organization, the University of Applied Sciences in Utreacht, we have concluded that each stakeholder organized his part of the process very well and was well aware of his own responsibilities in this process. But it appeared that everybody feels only responsibility for his own part of the process and only reflects on how to improve with respect to his own part. So the chain was invisible. To mention an example, the department in our organization that takes care of all our exams found out that they needed 3 weeks to proper organize all the facilities for students with a disability. And then the examination board, which has responsibilities that in the chain follows of the above mentioned department, came to the conclusion that they needed also 3 weeks in order to evaluate the request of facilities. And as a result, there was only 1 week, only 5 days left for our student advisors to inform all our students with disability, only 4,000 students, and help them with their request for these facilities. And to make it even worse, you have to remember that this particular week was the very first week for all the students at the university. So that didn't work. Last year we analyzed these transition moments and processes during a couple of brown paper sessions with various stakeholders and with students with a disability. And we discussed the following topics: orientation on the study, start of the study, the first 100 days of the study, and requests for provisions and facilities. And it proved to be very useful, and I would recommend to make a student journey every 3 years.
So thank you, Harriet. For now, we give you a lot of information, and the last part of our talk is like a short brain teaser for you, some questions. So Karien, would you introduce that?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Harriet, for your story, because I think it really explains that it's that's sometimes from the system view, the process can be very well done, but from the student's perspective, it's a different question. And that is also often you see a gap between all information as well, between what the student knows. So as higher education institution, a lot of information might be given to students, but the question is, what do they really know at the end? Because the ultimate goal is, of course, that the student is informed. And that should be a starting point as well in the team of information provision as it comes to choosing study or orientation. So not is there enough information available within the institution, but how well are students informed? In introduction weeks, for example, you often see that students get an overload, and then it's really the question what sticks with the students, because they receive so much information. And we were wondering whether you recognize this puzzle of how to make sure that not only the right information is available, but also that the information lands well with the students. And how do you deal with it? How do you make sure that the information lands? And maybe also at this time when there's so much digital information and during the COVID-19, how does this influence this? So these are questions we would like to ask you and to respond and reflect upon in the Q&A or in the chat. And our aim is actually to really bundle as well this information and your input and suggestions with the information to get more and to inspire others as well. So if you have any thoughts about whether you recognize the information provision at the one side and whether information lands with the students at the other hand, and how do you deal with it to make sure the information also gets there, and how this current situation influences, we're really curious about that. Can't hear you, Dara.
Oh, my thing was on mute, apologies. They're a bit of a shy group today, so I'm going to let them think about that and pop some stuff into the chat, please, for our presenters. But I have a question myself. First of all, just a comment is that I love this concept of the student journey and then taking everybody's roles and kind of matching this process up. It's just an ingenious way of kind of operationalizing inclusion, making it actually happen. Because the culture is one thing and to make it happen is another. And I think actually even the act of trying to operationalize it like this is awareness raising in and of itself, by bringing all of these different actors into the fold to sort of make them aware of their own role in the process. That in itself is awareness raising. But I wondered for you guys in ECIO, I wonder, had you thought about this from, from an organizational approach from your side, what your role is? Have you, in terms of, have you looked at the student journey and tried to see what part you play at different stages? It's a bit of a selfish question because I'm wondering if we should be doing the same. So this is for Karien or Marjolein.
I don't know whether you can answer, Marjolein, the right way.
Now I'm just thinking about but at this moment we were helping, of course, the institutions in this whole process. And during for example, the process workshops, we share our expertise, and we can use all we know from all different kinds of institutions, right? So we are there also like facilitating, but also using our expertise in that way. So it's also about how do you call that? I don't know the English word for it. It has to do with mindset as well.
I think for me it's very interesting, and I think it's definitely something I'd like. Thinking of reflecting on your own presentation, it's something I'd like to do with our staff, is together to look at your student journey map and see where we contribute in different places. So it's a fascinating concept. I think I can see a comment here from Rachel in the chat box. She says that we found that we need to drive students to our online information using trusted intermediaries, often peers. So she's using peers to deliver that information, or through activities embedded in taught lessons, so in the actual pedagogy itself. And just providing information in and of itself is not sufficient. And I think there's another comment coming in here from Claire. It's really difficult to manage this even at normal times, but at this time, it's even more difficult to ensure that students receive the message that you are giving as you intended it. I think we ought to do much more ongoing assessment and build time in at the end of every lesson for feedback. Then the teacher can gauge whether the student has grasped the lesson or not. So leaving that to the end of the year is too late. I think that's absolutely vital, because it's not just about just-in-time feedback, but it's also about providing students with agency in the process in terms of by their response they can affect the future teaching practice. I think that's really important too. Any reflections on those comments?
I think it's very recognizable that we're dealing with, and we also heard about, especially in the students, about how higher education students really want to involve students during this summer, because they know the introduction is going to be hard and they want to already work on connecting with them. And they're thinking also about like what's wonderful is like if they use Teams and you can only see 9 students, so they should make groups bigger than 9 students, because then they all can see each other. All these kind of things to think of, and that are wonderful things to do.
That's great, guys. So listen, I'm really, really grateful for you coming and sharing the work, and it's definitely sparked my brain cells. Lots of thinking for me to do on what you've said. So thank you so much to Marjolein, Karien and Harriet for sharing with us today.